Flywoo may have just fixed one of the biggest problems with the DJI O4 system with this $17 accessory, which could totally change how you fly. But before you get one, there's a few things that you need to know about it first. This is Flywoo's new wide-angle lens for the DJI O4. I ordered a few as soon as they were announced a few weeks back. No discount, no sponsorship. I bought this because I'm curious as to whether it will finally make the O4 Lite feel better to fly. The O4 Lite for me was the more exciting of the two DJI Air units released earlier this year. It's lighter, smaller, cheaper, and perfect for sub 250 freestyle builds. But then came the reports of the limitations, the short camera cables, the fragile casing, and a narrow field of view that made proximity flying much harder. And let's not forget about the jello. Whilst all of these have been addressed through additional products or software updates, the field of view has been very DIY so far. And this lens might just mean that you don't have to pull apart that camera, create your own solution with some glue and the hope that you don't mess it up. But before we get into exactly what you came here for, let me show you what I'm flying today to show off this lens. I'm going to be flying this new Flywoo Firefly 1.8 inch quad rather than one of my other freestyle O4 builds, for reasons that I'll get into later in the video. And I will do a video on the new Firefly soon as I finish testing it, so make sure you subscribe and don't miss when that video drops in the future. So let's take a look at the side-by-side comparison first on the bench, then we'll get it outside and do the same in the sun. We'll do some flights to compare as well, and then I'll show you the lens, how it installs, and the options that are available. Here's what the standard DJI O4 looks like in my goggles. And here's what it looks like with the wide-angle lens. Again, the standard O4 and with the lens, and I'm going to put them side by side, so pause the video here if you want to see what the difference is. As you can see, the lens increases the field of view quite a bit, but there seems to be a bit of that new lens in the shot. I thought this might be to do with the 3D print, so I bought a few of these and I tried it with a few of the different ones, and I still had the same result. However, although you can see this in the goggles, for some reason you don't get this in the DVR recording, which you'll see when I get outside. But that's enough bench testing. Let's see how this performs in a real life scenario. I tried this outside so that you can see what it looks like in natural light. The edge of that lens is much more obvious in daylight, but hopefully this gives you an idea of how wide the lens is. I'm going to put them both on the screen at the same time now for a direct comparison, but pause the video here if you want to inspect the differences between those two images. Let's try flying a similar route side by side so you can see the difference of how this performs. I'll use the DVR recording for this, and I'll leave the goggles recording in the corner so you can see what I'm seeing, as it is a little bit different. In hindsight, trying to fly the same line was actually a lot more difficult than I thought because that field of view has thrown me off a little bit. So I'm sorry this doesn't line up completely, but hopefully this will give you an idea of the differences. I do see a bit of a color shift as a result of the lens. I can also see that the lens has softened the image a little, but not a huge amount, but enough to be noticeable. There's some warping towards the edges like a fisheye lens, but honestly, it's really easy to fly with. It's actually quite surprising how much of a difference this makes. I was one of those people that didn't really see an issue with the field of view originally, and then kept bumping into stuff. And I realized when I'm going back to analog, HD0, or even my O4 Pro, it's definitely not my crappy flying. It's the field of view of the O4. I'm pretty sure that's the case. It's, yeah, not my crappy flying. Now, this is a small quad, but you can definitely feel the extra weight of this compared to when I flew it without it. But I don't think it would be an issue on a larger quad with bigger motors. I thought I'd do a quick test of the optics in a more challenging set of light conditions, so I pointed this directly at the sun, and you can see how the flaring is different, but actually it's not so bad. And if I come down here into the trees, it goes from light to dark very quickly, which usually brings out some issues. And again, there is a difference to without the lens, but it's still very flyable. Okay, so you've now seen what this lens can do. Let's look at the lens itself and go through some of the good, the not so good, and the mistakes I made and how you can avoid them. There are a few versions of the Flywoo wide-angle lens, and I ironically ordered the wrong one, so let me try and explain what these are, because I clearly didn't understand that at the time, and I'm sure I'm not going to be the only one that's going to do this. There are three main versions of this wide-angle lens with variants of each in terms of what you get, but they all have the same field of view. The difference is just in how it mounts. So firstly, there's a version that makes the O4 camera the size of an O4 Pro that lets you use it with frames designed for an O4 Pro, which sounds odd. Why wouldn't you just use an O4 Pro? But right now you can actually buy an O4. It will save you a ton of weight. And if you're a freestyle pilot, you'll be very aware that the O4 Pro is over twice the cost and you're going to end up breaking this eventually. The second version makes the O4 camera the size of an O3 camera. This is a great option as there are so many frames available for use with an O3, including the newer O4 frames, which are backwards compatible usually. This is actually what I meant to order, but I didn't. I actually ordered option 3. And in this version, this is the one that's called the O4 camshell. This is a push-on fit for the O4, but doesn't fit directly on the O4 camera itself. It requires you to also buy one of these Flywoo camshells that you put the O4 into. These camshells don't come when you order the wide-angle lens as standard, which in hindsight makes it more expensive than the O3 or O4 Pro version. And if, like me, you've just ordered one of these and you have your Flywoo camera shell, you can just mount it, right? Well, no, these are specifically designed for the way that Flywoo have been mounting DJI cameras to their O4 quads. The problem is that this is an 18mm mount, not 20 like the O3 and O4 Pro. And I don't think anyone else uses an 18mm mount other than Flywoo, so just do yourself a favor and buy the O3 version. If you have bought this version with the 18mm mount like I did, you might need to 3D print a spacer or an adapter or modify it in some way to make it fit correctly in some frames. But then if you're mounting in an O3 frame that has TPU as the mount for the camera, it should just bend to accommodate. So I ordered this Flywoo Firefly partially so I could whack this lens on and off quickly, and then I have the O4 ready to go with the wide angle lens for this test, with something designed specifically for this rather than faffing around trying to make something fit. Now let's look at the lens in a little bit more detail. This is a 3D printed lens mount and it's a bit flexible but very good quality, and it fits this lens perfectly. I'm not entirely sure if this lens element is glass or not, and I couldn't find any info of this on their website, but judging by the way that it flares in direct sun, I think it's just a plastic lens. One of the first things I thought when I first opened this was that there's light colored material inside, and I thought that this was going to be reflected back onto the glass in direct sunlight and affect the image. And I was right, it does. So Flywoo, if you're watching this, please make it all black on the inside for future versions. This weighs just under 4 grams, which doesn't seem like a lot, but then I think it puts it out of the realms of using it for a tiny whip where every single gram counts. And even on the quad that I use in this test, I did feel the additional weight when the lens was on it, which is a bit of a shame. This lens apparently increases the field of view to the same as the O4 Pro, which is around 155 degrees. So it's very wide, which means that you'll get the frame appearing in the video if it's not an O4 frame. But I'm going to do more testing of this for some of the builds that I've got planned in the future. So here's my initial verdict on this. For something so simple and a fairly cheap upgrade, it is really good. It makes the O4 feel much better to fly with. So thank you Flywoo for once again fixing the things that DJI didn't do. I will be using this in some other builds coming up where I can, and I'll probably get an O3 version to see if there's a difference in whether you get the lens in frame in the goggles still. And hopefully that should make it a little bit easier to mount to some of my favorite frames. Yes, I'll likely whack this into one of my favorite quad Moolah frames. Probably a 3-inch coming soon. And another thing about the mount, because it's a push/friction fit mount, a couple of times when I crashed, it moved forward, creating like an old skate video fisheye effect where the lens had like moved a little bit. When I got the quad back, it moved less than 1 millimeter forward, so I don't think it's actually going to fall out unless you repeatedly do this. But this is just another reason to get the O3 or O4 Pro sized version. Also, the optics aren't perfect. They do affect the color a little and the sharpness of the O4 camera. That said, I've always found that the O4 camera is a little bit too sharp, so I don't mind that so much. And although I saw some flaring in the sunlight, I don't think it was that bad. But I'd love to see somebody flying with one of these in a race with all the LED lights, etc., as I think it will test how this performs in really challenging light conditions. The only other thing I want to say is that I have no idea how durable this will be. It's taken a few hits in my limited testing, and I'm fully expecting with this huge lens element on the front, it will either fall out or break or something, but so far it's been pretty good. So the big question is it worth it? And I would say yes. I'm glad that I bought a few of these. And I just wish I hadn't been so stupid and bought this version and got the O3 version instead, so you'll see these coming up in future builds. But I really like this. I am way more confident hitting gaps with this on. I just don't always make it through them. Whereas without the lens on, I either chicken out or I kind of brace for impact as I'm going through just in case. I just wish I could get it on some of my other O4 builds like my Tiny Trainer and my Caillou Mini, but I can't see how this would be possible. And if you're wondering why I haven't done many videos recently, it's because I've been building and flying these things. But let me know in the comments if you want to see a bit more about them, and maybe I'll do a video in the future. Anyway, I've decided that a connoisseur of FPV like yourself would probably enjoy this video next. So I will see you in the next one.